Something that you said to me that will forever stick with me really early on was, "What, you don't think you can do that thing because you've never done it before?" You kinda showed me that circular logic of imposter syndrome. Of course you're an imposter. Everybody's an imposter.
And we all have to go through it a first time. Welcome to another episode of After the Cert, the career podcast for product managers who've collected all the certifications and taken all the courses and still feel stuck in their product career. I'm your host, Jess Sherlock, product management career coach. I know firsthand what it feels like to be overwhelmed, lonely, and stuck in your product career. And I'm on a mission to help you feel confident and empowered to take the lead in your product career and achieve your unique career goals. You can count on me for practical and actionable advice, plus relatable stories from PMs navigating the messy middle of their career. And remember, if you're feeling stuck with your product management job search, worried about making a great impression during your first 90 days in a new product job, or you want to position yourself for a promotion at work, I'm here to help. You can check out my coaching programs at justsherlock.com/apply and book time on my calendar so we can chat. Let's get into it. All right. Hey, everybody. We're here today with one of my favorite clients. And I always have to say one of my favorite because I think everyone else might get upset.
But do you?
Secretly.
But
Secretly. Not so secretly. We've been chit-chatting. Before we even got on the podcast, we were chit-chatting for a half hour catching up. And I had to be like, all right, time out. We need to actually record this podcast. We have
started podcasting before the podcasting
know.
began.
I know. And even before the podcast existed, I think some of our coaching sessions could have been podcast episodes
I think
probably.
that's right.
We missed the opportunity. So as always, and I shared this with you, but a reminder for anybody who's listening is, product careers are always unique is what I've found. Is like there are no two product managers who have the same exact degree, the same exact career experience, or even the same goals. And that's like my favorite part about working with product managers is that pretty much the only thing we share is what like our temptation to overachieve and
Our
be
perfectionism.
our perfectionism, and maybe like a dab of willingness to tackle the most gnarly problem even if it might burn us out or overwhelm us. We're just like up
Oh,
for
yes.
any challenge.
Let's go.
So,
relevant to the discussion
yeah,
today, I feel.
very relevant. So we're going to talk about your career. And what I always think is really interesting is peeling back the layers and really like looking behind the curtain at, more than just what might show up on your LinkedIn. Because I think if someone goes to your LinkedIn, they take a peek at your titles, they look at what you're doing now, they might be like, oh, okay, makes sense. That's fine. But I'm excited because I know the background and I know what came before your current role. I know what led you here and I know the why around your career vision and why you made some of these decisions. So I'm really excited for folks to hear your story. And I would encourage you, like I have, tell us all the ins and outs because that's what people want to hear.
I'll be judicious in what I share.
All right. So let's start with an introduction. So I know you very well, but tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you even heard about product or how product even got onto your radar.
Yeah, right on. I'm Amanda Gaffney. I'm currently a product data analyst at Connect for Health Colorado, which I'm so excited to talk about because it's a fairly new position, almost 4 months ago. So excited. But a little bit about me as a person. I am a mom to a 7-year-old who is the most precocious, smart, funny, delightful human being on the planet. I'm also just a huge nerd. So I play a lot of D&D and other tabletop games, board games, love a puzzle. I'm an outdoorsy person. Started learning to snowboard this past year, so got some sick muscles out of doing such a challenging sport. And I love hiking, creative stuff. I'm from New York. Remember, we're both from New York.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but
That's right.
I'm from the downstate zone. But I moved to Colorado in 2012, up in Northwest
Okay.
Colorado, just beyond.
Yeah. So let's talk career. And here's my first question for you. So most people and their kids do not say they want to be a product manager. This is not like, I want to be a nurse. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a product manager.
Right.
Maybe someday. But yeah, I'm always curious. Can you remember not only like when product first even like got on your radar, but when was the point that you knew product was your calling, or it was the thing
Yeah.
that like was most natural to you?
Yeah. So I didn't know this job existed until like 2.73 days before I took a job as a product manager,
Okay.
which, yeah, it was really interesting because I was leaving another company where I was the customer service manager. And so I was looking for other positions in that same vein. I found Sondermind, which is a Colorado based company. It's now nationwide, which is really exciting to have been part of that journey. Super awesome. But they had just gotten Series A. They were hiring for a bunch of positions and they had a customer operations manager position. And I had used Sondermind, but back before they were Sondermind, to find my first therapist. Like they were fairly new. And it was literally like we got an email from someone and they lean over to one of their like handful of therapists, like, do you want to take this client? But even then, even in their essentially their MVP, it was like the easiest experience I ever had finding a therapist. And so I was like, I want to work for that. I'm so passionate about mental health. I really was looking for a mission that makes the world a better place. And they were hiring for a role that I was qualified for. I went up against who is now one of my dearest friends, but she had a ton of scaling call center experience. She was 100% the right person to hire for that position. But they were like, stick around because like stuff's changing real fast right now and we're hiring for a lot of stuff. We think we could find something for you. And so for the next like few weeks, I was kind of passed around to different execs, like talking about what was their goal for their organization, timeline for certain things. And there was a lot of like, we think you could be good at this. Are you interested in that? It might be about 3 months before we're talking about it. We don't know if we need it. Like the way Series A tends to be like, let's do it. We're doing stuff.
Yeah,
And
totally.
I happened to, yeah, I got a call from the VP of product, and he was like, we'd really want to talk to you about being our first product manager, like, and it would be an associate product manager role. And I was like, yeah, I'm in. Like, sign me up. I'll sign the contract today, whatever. Also, what is that job? I don't know. I don't know what that is. If you think I'm qualified, sign me up. But I had no idea.
Yeah.
And
You were
so,
just so excited about the company, the mission, and
yeah.
probably the people from the sounds of it that
Totally,
yeah.
yes. All of that. I mean, I was saying that during my interview, I felt, like, really challenged. I felt like I grew from the interview, and I'm like, "Yes,
Mhm.
we are growing, we are learning," which I love. And so I was talking to you before we started here around how, like, product management is a very hard thing to describe to people who are not technology startup-y type people. And so as the VP of product at the time was trying to explain to me what my role was going to be and why my skills were going to transfer to it and all of that, I just I I knew nothing. I learned everything. Every 30 seconds was a new learning experience in that first
That's
time. So,
amazing. That's
yeah,
amazing.
super, super awesome. And then I had a really nice turning point where when you're a frontlines person and you're doing more of the like interfacing with customers, you see a lot of the problems that are happening, right? What's pissing customers off, what's not functioning well, like where planning or execution is falling apart. Like you see all of that from the back seat. And then you end up like shouting into the void, like, why won't anyone listen to me and fix this part of the product?
Yeah.
And so, to your question about when did I realize it was my calling, it was pretty quick where I was like, oh, I get to do it. I have to make it. Like I take in all of these problems from customers and I actually get to be like, time to go fix the software, which is awesome. And also funny to sit in that other seat where you're the one who's pissing people off because you're not solving all the
Yeah.
problems,
Yeah.
which was a fun perspective shift to have. So yeah, I was super excited to solve problems, and then I just got to be like a real nerd for the craft of product, which kind of stuck with me. Like I think it's real fun and it's never boring and it's always challenging. There's always learning. And so yeah, sticking
Yeah.
with it, I think.
Yeah. Amazing. So we're going to walk through the details because this is my favorite part of walking through someone's career is we know the point at which you started doing product. But what I want to do now is look at the career overall So let's zoom out before we zoom back in and talk about kind of when our paths crossed. Give us the overview of your career at large, but tell us a bit about the details of those roles and the transitions that might not be immediately obvious if we were to just look at your LinkedIn.
My insane resume. Yeah. So I guess it's probably worth going back to college, or maybe my fourth grade yearbook, actually, where this was originally captured. But when I was a kid, I wanted to be an actress, which is so funny because, like, over time, I realized I have massive stage fright. Which is so funny because I'm like hopelessly attention seeking. Like, please give me all of your attention, but also don't look at me. So I went to college and originally started with a psych major, but really quickly switched over to theater arts. And I thought I was going to do more of the acting kind of stuff. But I found one, stage fright, and two, I had more of a knack for set design type stuff and crew, technical backstage stuff. And I also got really passionate about educational outreach theater, so working with kids and doing programs with them to write and perform plays. And so I found myself like a very much more like backstagey, operational kind of person. Yeah, and so after college, I applied to a lot of theaters, all of that, and then I kind of my wild card. I just shot my shot at Teach for America. I had done so much educational theater and engaging kids and all of that like that's the story I told, and I was so fortunate that I got in and I got to go to Louisiana for 2 years and teach in this remarkable, awesome community. Like, so great. I miss it all the time. But I found I really loved teaching. And a theme with me is that I was terrible at it at first. And then over time, like, built the skills. Another theme of me is being dropped into a job that I have 0 minutes of experience with. So, yeah, taught first grade, moved to New Jersey, taught second grade for a minute. And then I taught middle school English and social studies. And that's when I moved to
Wow.
Colorado. Yeah. So it's so funny. People get scared in executive meetings, including me sometimes. But I'm like, I have just spoken to sixth graders. I am not afraid of these people. I've
And
seen worse.
yeah, they have like fallen asleep, zoned out,
Yeah.
ignored you, probably bullied you from the seat. I can't
I'm like, I've been
imagine.
through this, kids. I don't need this. Yeah.
Who knew? Who knew? Sixth grade English could prepare you for, an exec meeting. That's amazing.
Yeah,
So you
exactly
moved
right. Yeah.
so you moved to Colorado, then what?
Yep. Yeah, and so I taught there, and then, like so many people, unfortunately, I got super burnt out as a teacher, and I had no idea what I was going to do next, but I knew that for my mental health, I needed to take a significant shift. Could have been a break, could have been whatever, but something needed to change. I also knew that my husband at the time and I were moving to Denver 5 months after I stopped teaching. So I'm like, what do you do for income in 5 months, especially in rural Colorado? It was up in
Yeah.
the northwest corner. So I ended up. Uh, this is probably the weirdest job I've held, or the most inconsistent with the rest of my story. But I sold cowboy boots at a Western wear store in Steamboat Springs.
Wait, hold on, the
So
one with the yellow signs?
a one with the yellow signs. Yes, I know non-Colorado people might not know it, but it's like if you drive from Denver up into Steamboat Springs, up into the mountains, you pass dozens of these bright yellow signs because this was
Does
like,
everywhere. And
yes,
I can't the funny thing is I can see the sign. I've done that drive more times than I can count. What is the name of that store?
FM Light and Sons.
That's
Yeah.
it. This
And
episode not
yeah,
officially sponsored, but not officially
yeah,
sponsored.
right.
If someone at FM Light and Sons would like to reach out, you can find my email,
Yeah,
jessherlock.com.
yeah.
So you're
I will
selling
endorse you.
cowboy boots. I'm
I'm just
not
slinging cowboy boots. And again, 0 minutes of experience in retail or anything resembling cowboy, cowgirl,
How
horse,
am I just now
nothing.
hearing about this?
I
That
don't
might
know.
be the most Colorado answer I've ever gotten from someone.
Literally, like, and then I just went and sold Western wear. Yeah, it felt like such a left turn. And I also felt really lucky because that's like such a special thing to
Yeah.
get to do.
A cult
And
following there, that place.
yeah, right. Yeah. I really, really loved retail. I don't know if people say that, if that's words people say, but like I got to make people happy all day. And
Yeah.
that felt really nice to me. And it's not that there weren't like, I
That's
mean,
so
retail is not all
interesting.
rainbows, but like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, looking back, can you pinpoint skills that were definitely transferable during that time to what you're doing
From
now?
to what I'm doing now. Yeah, it's funny going back to the VP of product trying to explain to me what this job was. The thing I was bringing to the table was deep knowledge of my users and customers. Because if you're going to sell to somebody, you need to get to know them. You need to get to know their problems and their circumstances and the context of what brought them into that store in the first place. And then
Absolutely.
propose solutions to them and test the
Mhm.
waters to see what's feeling good to them before I just launch into a speech about some $600 cowboy boots. Like, you have to really understand.
$600?
Yeah, that was not even the most.
Guess I've
There's some
never
fancy
bought.
stuff up in there, okay?
Well, now
Yeah,
I just learned something new today.
you did.
I'm also hearing tailoring your message because I'm sure you also probably
Yeah,
had to communicate why a boot cost or 2 boots cost that much
totally. Yes.
to someone
Yes,
who may not understand what it is that they're purchasing. I would certainly be asking why
totally.
they cost so much.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
Interesting. So you're slinging cowboy boots. You're
Yeah.
trying to figure out what's next. You're in a new state. So tell us what happens then.
Yeah, we moved to Denver and this question comes up again, right? Because this was only supposed to be this like short stint. And then I was going to figure out what big girl job I was going to get when I got to the big city. And I was just like, I think, honestly, like, I think I want to continue with retail and see where this leads. It is tough to go from teaching where I have a high degree of stability and such a salary or whatever. So making a choice to go to retail, which is a bit less stable and the pay is not as high, was like, I was really choosing something because it made me happy or I enjoyed it versus these other things that are also important, but just kind of fell by the wayside for me. And so I ended up working at, it's funny, like I consider this like my first startup. It was a little baby boutique, honeybee baby boutique in Aurora, Colorado. But it was great. Like I got to help this couple open this store and I was also there on the day that it closed. Like, they really tried they did something really, really special in that time. It was amazing to be part of it. Then ultimately, it wasn't the journey, it was not to continue. It was such a cool experience. Like, I was like, "I'm gonna do operations and projections so that I can, talk about inventory. I'm gonna research brands. I'm gonna
Wow.
do merchandising. Like, I'm gonna design our Shopify site and put all the content on there." Like, it was just this is the beauty of an early startup, if that's the word for it. Is like you just get to
Yeah,
do all the stuff
100%.
and
I would
yeah,
absolutely consider that a startup, right? And
yeah.
so that was a couple years.
Yes, before I started in tech world. So I joined one of our vendors in the store. They knew that I was really passionate about their products, we'll say. They knew that I was over here slinging these baby carriers. That it was a
Mhm.
baby carrier company called Lila Baby. And so when they heard that I had lost my other job, and also I had found out 2 days before the store closed that I was pregnant. So it was like, I'm pregnant. I am out of a job. Which was a real crazy moment in my life. But, I had had such a good relationship with this vendor. They kind of honestly knew that that was a step I was trying to take in life. And so the store closed and it was like, Amanda loves this product, real newly pregnant. Like, let's get her in here and find a spot for her. And so I got to join their customer service team. And again, lots of different opportunities here. I got to optimize our Zendesk instance and our self help content. I got to organize and attend work events like different trade shows and things. So I got to wear a lot of hats there too, which was really fun. And did that for 2 years, worked for 13 straight months with a baby on my hip the whole time. Like, childcare is really expensive. So I was typing with one hand and, feeding a kid with the other.
Wow. Wow.
Again, the choices that I make in life are very interesting. But yeah, I
I
got to
think
do
that says a
that.
lot. That says a lot about the culture of the
Yes.
company.
Yes.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, when we started talking about your career experience, this was a period of time that you kind of overlooked or maybe minimized a bit in your memory
Uh,
as it pertained to like the direct applicability to what you were doing in product. And I
yeah.
can't remember the specific projects, but something around, I mean, not only were you working on their Zendesk integration and e-commerce related details, was there an ERP
Yes.
And they
Oh
put
my
in the
God.
job,
Yes.
like,
How could I forget the most probably relevant thing that I did there
yeah,
to
like,
actual
there were
product? Yes.
yeah, for
Yeah,
being
we
retail, you were involved in, like, you said, like, I did even as you're talking about it now, I'm like, there was a lot more that you were responsible for
yeah.
in this role beyond just,
Yeah.
"Hey, buy this baby carrier."
Nope, that was it. No, you're totally right. I think that was it's so funny because now I look back at the people I worked with and I'm like, "Oh, they were that's who I was going to be someday," like the people gathering the requirements and helping figure out the solution and all of that. So, yeah, we migrated from QuickBooks to NetSuite and we were like automating all this stuff. We had just set up with a new warehouse. I was also our logistics and shipping human
Wow.
for direct to consumer. Yeah, and so it was in all of these different like customer experience operations kind of stuff. And it was like we were converting over to NetSuite in this new warehouse. And so I acted as like the functional SME for the flow of orders. And so I wasn't collecting the requirements, but I was very much in the room, participating in providing requirements, seeing how they're collected. That was something that was a really cool experience and kind of early product for me.
Yeah, yeah. And what I find really interesting is like you're not the first person whose early exposure happened even before you were aware of products. So this is the job you had
Yeah.
before you officially had your product role. And what I constantly see with folks who are either trying to officially get into product or folks who have been essentially doing product and have never had the title is when you really dig into the past experiences, I mean, I do this often enough that they jump out and they feel really loud to me, right? But even just the work you've talked about so far, I can rattle off 25 skills that are transferable to product, right?
Totally.
Stakeholder management, there's customer discovery, there's probably some amount of usability testing where when you're at that conference and you're fitting someone, if you realize, ooh, this is a use case we hadn't considered, right? And all of a
Yes.
sudden you're providing that feedback back to the product team.
Totally.
You
Yes.
know, and the list I think just goes on and on. And this is double-edged sword, I think, for product, where there's this desire, I think, for people to want to be a PM and you want to like check the box of I am a PM when,
Totally.
as we'll talk about, product roles take the shape of the people on the team and the stage of the company and the goals that they have
Yes.
at any given time. And so the finish line kind of like is always moving. Like there is no point where you like ta-da, you're now a product manager once and for all. It's like even the product manager who was really successful last year, right
Yeah.
now there's vibe coding during interviews and there's new expectations around understanding AI
Totally.
agents and other things. And so that's an exciting thing, but I think it can also create this lack of clarity
Mm.
around like what does it actually mean to be a PM? What skills are actually important? And so one of the things I love to help people with is be like, hey, you realize you were doing bits and pieces of this 2, 3, 4 jobs ago, right? And now
Right.
you can actually like that's a helpful story. That's a skill you can
Mhm.
bring to bear. So there's a lot of
Yes.
that
Totally.
you really had, I think, and you were just in your mind, you were just the manager of customer success, but
Right.
really you're like a chipmunk packing your cheeks with all these skills that you're gonna
That's
need later.
just burying my acorns. I'll find them later.
Yeah. So, at this point, this is the transition you gave us a little glimpse of where you'd been doing this customer success role, but then you get
Mhm.
asked to do, this associate product manager role,
Mhm.
and I'm curious now, as someone who has experience in the field, has met other PMs, is it clearer to you now what that VP saw in you?
Yeah. Yes, this goes back to like the ability to deeply understand and suss out customer needs and then figure out how to meet those needs is spot on. And that was the part that he emphasized over and over again. And I'm like, so what? You just need to like know your customers? Is that it? I'm a PM. I did it. We did it. um, and like that is the core of it, right? So I understand why that struck him as transferable now. And then to your point, I had a smattering of these like other things that I had done that proved out that I could apply those skills in a very specific way. So yes, I get it now.
All right, so at this point, you've now officially made the jump into tech. This
Mhm.
VC backed mental health tech startup. And I know you went through a couple different official roles, and then at some
Mhm.
point we got connected. So I guess what led you to seek out coaching?
So I don't know if I said this earlier, but not only was this a product manager role, it was the first product manager role at Sondermine. So we had a VP and then we had this new person coming in. And that was such a wild and cool experience because if you are the one person, you have to learn everything. You have to learn all the stakeholders, all the different user groups, internal, external, all of that. I had to learn a lot of the tech. Like I was really lucky that I had a really good understanding of what was under the hood of what we were doing. I think I've told you before, like someone needed to sit down and explain to me what a database was. Like I had a vague sense. It's just so funny to think of what I didn't know and what I had to learn so quickly. And so at that time, the very specific problems I was focused on were focused on our intake funnel. Like, how do we bring in clients, take in their information, which is so funny because I think Yolanda on your one of your last episodes was saying she
Mhm.
did the same thing, which I love.
Yep.
But it's like, how do we collect the information? How do we match it up to what we know about our clinicians? How do we get them into a first session as quickly as possible with the right person? Which was a very, very intense position to be in for like a baby PM. Like
Yeah.
when I look back at what was under my purview with 7 months of experience under my belt,
Yeah.
I just want to hug that girl. Like that was really
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, and it's
um,
something that something I've said, it's a bit controversial, but I'll say it again. Even the most junior product role, if you were to compare that to other roles in an organization, it's relatively more senior, right, than the most
sure,
junior analyst or the most junior customer success person or customer service person. Like product is holding so much of the decisions around prioritization or resourcing or other things that have a direct cost to the business if it
direct
works or
cost,
it
right?
doesn't. Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes.
so I couldn't agree with you more. And this is why like, I think it's a controversial statement, but I'm like, I don't believe that product management is a entry level role, period.
Mm,
However, right,
I had not
associate
thought of that.
product is an entry level role for
Mm,
product. But it's
right.
a really tricky place. Like if you can imagine, if you can think back to like going from strictly being a teacher and you didn't
Mhm.
have that period of time where you had gotten experience with retail and then the experience at the role where you were doing retail and some operations and some migrations, like, those were the building blocks that gave you
Totally,
the sense of what does it take to execute on technology solutions so that
totally.
when you showed up here, that part you kind of already had under your belt. So then you could
Mhm.
say, okay, someone needs to actually look at this process and propose a solution.
Right,
That's a different level of thinking that, like, yeah,
totally,
whereas your other roles, they weren't PM roles by definition, but they were absolutely the building blocks that set you up for success in this first PM role. Would you agree?
totally. 100%, yeah.
So during this time at Sondermine, what did that 4.5 years look like from
Mhm.
I don't know what an associate PM is to the company's
So
obviously growing, getting more
yeah,
investment. So how was your role and your day to day, and maybe even your title? Like how was all of that affected as the company was growing?
yeah. So I look back as an associate PM, and I really was more of a product owner now that I understand the distinction between those things. So it's very execution based, which I actually loved. I think sometimes people can talk about those two things in like a value sort of way. I
Mm,
think they're both really important roles and suited to different kind of mindsets. And so I actually think being a product owner was a great start for me because I got to do some more of these sort of like the nitty gritty of it. So yeah, did that, and then like I said, kind of got slotted into this intake role, and that was the first time that I felt like I had to come to the table with a strategy. I needed to be able to articulate competition. I needed to be able to like hop into our Looker instance and pull out some data and ask some questions about that data. I was responsible for the scoping of things. Like before that, I really felt like I was like receiving the strategy and receiving the scope even. And then I'd go and write the tickets and
mm.
huck them over to the engineers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that the onus on me during that time was way, way, way more intense, but it was great. I loved working with my engineers. I loved the problem set, even though it was a hard one to deal with. So my time in that role came to an end. We were looking for someone, to be honest, more experienced in conversion funnels, someone more experienced than me in that way. And at the same time, we were standing up our platform and architecture team for the first time, breaking our monolithic architecture into microservices. So let's retrace the steps. A year and a half before that, I'm like, what's a database? And then it is my job to help segment an architectural breakout roadmap and talk to our highly technical engineers and try to argue with them. I love them.
Debate.
Arguing is not a dirty word.
No,
Debate what
debate.
the right scope is for each phase of this project.
Yeah.
Another example of where I'm just fully out of my depth
Yeah.
and just doing it. Had I ever heard the word microservice? Nope. We were just
Yeah.
doing it.
What was it like as the face of the product team to an extent? Because I imagine you also had to explain or bring along these non-technical stakeholders in the company who can't understand why you're just not building new features, right? Why are we doing this thing that's somewhat invisible? Right? Was that a part of the job at that point too?
Yeah, and it was really tough. It was slow going. And this is like, I have so many moments where I look back on things I did and I want to like rewrite it. Like I I could have made that case so stronger. I could have held the line better. I could have, but the storytelling was really difficult, especially when you're looking at a business that's really gung ho on a metric that is not related to the speed with which developers can deploy. They don't care. They don't
Yeah,
care.
I
They're
don't
like, does
care.
it work? Is it coming soon? I hope there are no bugs.
Yes.
So yeah, I think a lot of times I lost ground on prioritizing some of those tech initiatives, and we would allocate some of our people toward these other projects. And so it was really slow, very messy, would have made a lot of different decisions. I understand so much more when I move into these different roles of like, oh, they're going through a microservices transition. I know how messed up that can make things. I get why that's challenging or why that took longer than
Yeah.
it's supposed to. And so, yeah, it was a really cool exposure to what
Yeah.
engineers think about.
Yeah. I often get asked, or you'll see on LinkedIn, like debates and discussions around how many years of experience should someone have if they're an associate versus a PM versus a senior PM. And what I always seem to come back to is that that's not the right question to be asking.
I agree.
The question should be around what sorts of reps has this person had? It's sort of like, someone who is strength training, right? If you're going once a week versus 3 times a week, there's an immediate
Yeah,
difference there. Even if you've both been going to the gym for a year, right? The number of times per week affects it. The other exercises you're doing affects it. The different styles of exercising you've been doing affects it. And so in product, when I think about quality of reps, I'm thinking about things like, is your work focused in on the needs of the business and good, solid customer data? Did you measure the success of the things you built, right? But then I'm also thinking about what parts of the process did you get exposure to? Because if all of your reps are on a product that's in maintenance mode, those are very different reps
totally.
than a 0 to 1 launch, or that first go to market push of something brand new, or even
Totally.
iterations leading towards product market fit that continues to elude you, or sunsetting a product, right? Like these are just, they're all different. And so it's interesting to hear you basically, like, you've been through a certain situation. Now you have the ability to identify that pattern. First of all,
Totally.
you now have this experience in your back pocket that you can pull from, where, baby PM Amanda would not have been able to anticipate what was to come because that was her first time through it. Even just the second time through a similar thing, you would have made better and different decisions because you
Totally.
knew more about what was coming. So
Hmm.
this is the thing that I think is maybe the takeaway for this, for anyone who's listening and thinking about like what your next job should be or could be, is what are the reps you have had so far? And do you need more of the same, or do you need diversity? And you can't make that decision unless you know what's to come for you, right? Because
Yeah,
if you want to
totally.
specialize, or if you had only wanted to be in mental health tech, then one could argue that staying in that world and getting more and more reps and maybe going to another mental health tech company, like that would make a lot of sense for you. But
Hmm.
This is a good segue, I think. During this period of growth and the company's growing, I know that was a big period of time for mental health tech in general. It's like the post-COVID timeframe, so there's lots of demand. What what led you to say, "I think I need a coach"? Because this is when our paths
Yeah.
crossed. So tell us
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that.
So I had there was sort of one more step in that journey before I came to you, and this is where I moved into this more product operations role.
That's right.
Um, yes, my official title was program manager with a subtitle that was like product process manager, and it was under the umbrella of product operations. I now know it was straight up product operations is what I was trying to do. So at that point, I'd been there for about 3 years, and so I'd kind of watched how like business and product had grown up together and grown away from each other
Mm.
and the different dynamics in that. And as we're talking about how do we solve that, I'm looking at it with this like 3 years long back to Series A. I was here on day one of the product team kind of perspective, and I was like, I think I see why this isn't working. I think I see how we can start fixing this problem. And so I just wrote up a job description for myself and was like, to
Alright.
anyone who will listen, can I do this job? And then this is where I got the title of program manager. That's what we were going to hire for. There was no additional conversation needed, right? It was like, she can do this job. She'll be on the prod ops team. There are programs that need managing for sure. And she can kind of have this wider scope of responsibility as well. So yeah, that was my journey
Yeah.
there.
So at this point, our paths cross. So
Yes, yes, yeah. Now
something
we are there.
Yeah, so something led you to think, "I should get a coach." Tell us a little bit about, like, what led you to think you need a coach, or how did it happen that you stumbled upon me, right? And what was going on in your world that led you to think that?
Yeah. So I think my role ended up shifting over time into something that was not as fulfilling for me. I wasn't doing as much of that like big strategy, big operations stuff that I enjoy. It wasn't as much enablement work. It kind of ended up being more like, Scrum Mastery project based kind of stuff, which I'm not terribly good at. And so I was feeling kind of unfulfilled, and I saw that maybe like my time at Sondermine might be done, which was a really hard thing to
Yeah.
work through after having been there through so much. And so I had this thought, and you're talking about Ryan, who he was actually my coworker at Sondermind at the time,
That's right.
and the one who took over intake from me when I migrated away from it. So, yeah, which he's such a delightful human and just a very talented and wonderful PM. And so I went to him being like, "Hello, important person in my product career whose opinion I trust. Like, I think I don't suck at product, but I don't know what to do now. What do I do?" And he was like, "If you're really thinking about getting back into it," well, and he knew that I had all these like confidence issues and I believed myself to have all of these skill gaps. And so he's like, if you really believe that and you're really interested in going back into product, why don't you talk to a coach? And by the way, my former coworker is a coach and I really like her, and maybe you could go talk to
Yeah.
her and see what she's doing. Um, and I think it took me a bit to invest in myself that way because I was so low confidence at the time. It was like, what am I going to do? Go pay for a coach to like tell me, no, you're not cut out for product?
Alright, so it's August 2023. I get the intake form from you. You schedule an intro call with me, which is great. So I'd love to share what's in here. May I?
No. Yeah. No, next question, thanks. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh.
actually, I would love to hear from that lady. I don't know what she was saying back then.
Yeah, so you had 2 major things in mind, at least that you put in the form, for us to talk about in that initial call. So you said, first of all, you wanted to dig into your strengths and your gaps, which aligns with exactly what you're saying. You had hit this point where you knew you were doing some things well, maybe not other things. And when you're in a startup environment like that, where there's no career ladder, I'm imagining that you weren't having career development conversations, trying to make the best with the runway we've got.
I'm just finding like literally, I'm like, where's my next landing zone? Where's the
Yeah,
next thing I can parachute into and just figure out while
yes.
I'm there? Yeah.
Yeah, it was very much like startup survival mode, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I imagine at that point you're going, I could use just a bit of a read on where I'm at, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And you mentioned this, it seems like this was top of mind because you mentioned your next career move and you just said you'd like to think through what it would look like, what might be a good fit, what might be fulfilling, and how you'd go about finding something like that. But then here's what's interesting is you literally said, I'm even trying to figure out whether return to product work is really what I want, which is quintessentially probably like what I hear so often from people is there's the signal, the common signal is either burnout, where it's just like, I don't know, it's just drudgery, or it's, am I any good at this? Do I even want to do this? I hear it so often. You called out specifically that, your resume felt difficult because your career story had been winding and you knew you had the confidence issues and a little bit of imposter syndromes. But at the time too, correct me if I'm wrong, like your network was really limited. So as far as, like, I guess I'm curious before we talk about what the coaching experience was like, what else had you tried? Was there anything else that you had tried prior to seeking out coaching?
Oh, that's a really good question. Is crying into a bottle of wine an appropriate answer? Let's see, what did I try? I think honestly, like, I you're totally right. I didn't have a huge network at the time outside of Sondermind. I do this sometimes when I'm in a job. I get like real tunnel vision about that community. And then people who I've worked closely with will move on to another company. And it's like they might as well have winked out of existence until I think of
Yeah,
them. And I'm like, I love that lady. I should
that's not
call
just
her.
you. I think that
Yeah,
happens to a lot of people.
I think
And
so.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, so I don't think that's uncommon at all because why would you create a network when you're so busy?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Your
Exactly.
challenges are right in front of you. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like the time to go outside of that.
Yes, which is kind of the tough part, right? Because like I would go around to people I considered mentors inside of Soundermind, but these people had like years of watching my journey and years of investment in me as a person, like coworker relationship, friendship kind of stuff. They also knew the inner workings of Sondermind. And so there is a benefit to that because they could help me sort of calibrate my position within the company. But what I didn't have and where I think it was helpful to go to a coach was I needed someone who did not have all of that context on me, did not have all of the context on the company. And so I that's where I was like, where do I go? Do I
Yeah.
take a course? Do I just go and apply for a bunch of jobs and see who bites? But yeah, so I needed that third party, and Ryan is someone whose opinion I trusted, particularly on the subject of talented people who I would like to meet. And
Yeah.
so it was, a bit of a no-brainer to start with you. If I was going to go outside, start with something of a known quantity. And
Yeah.
you did not disappoint.
Well, so let's talk about what that is because you and I have worked together for long enough that we've seen how things have changed, how you have changed. And we were talking a little bit before the podcast about the role that you're in now and how, in hindsight, everything makes sense. But,
Yeah,
right, when you were in it and you're going, I've had these various roles. I know I can do things, but is this telling a cohesive story? How do I do
right.
this? Where do I want to go? Right. There were more questions than answers. So I guess when you think back on our time together, what are the specific things that either changed in your life or in your relationship to work that you would contribute directly to the coaching work that we did?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so many things. We haven't talked about what I did right after Sondermind, but I think something that you said to me that will forever stick with me really early on was, "What, you don't think you can do that thing because you've never done it before?" Do you remember saying this to me? It
That
was
sounds like
like,
something I would say.
yeah, you were like, "Hold on, are you saying" what was it? You're like, "Everyone who's ever, founded a company can only be good at it if they've founded a company before, or they can only do it if they've founded a company before." And that you kind of showed me that circular logic of imposter syndrome almost of like, of course you're an imposter. Everybody's an imposter. We're all
Yeah,
just like
sure. We
showing
all
up to
have,
life. We're doing our best.
and we all have to go through it a first time.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to look back, you helped me to look back over the past like you're doing now. Of think of all the things you didn't know back then and that you wouldn't have known if you hadn't just like stepped into a thing you've never done before. And that why not do it just because you haven't done it before has really stayed with me since you've talked about it. Because then it's like it encourages confidence and bravery that I feel like I didn't have before. And I could show up with you and like try some shit out and like, know I was going to be bad and like, be, more open to feedback than I might have been in the past because of like
Mhm.
pride issues or embarrassment, which I guess is like two sides of the same coin. So yeah, you helped with confidence, humility, and bravery just in like kind of that single idea of trying stuff you don't know how to do.
Yeah, so you're leaving us all hanging. Like there's a next step here. We start working together. The very first thing we do, and I do with every client in the Shine program, is we start talking about career vision because only you know what you want out of your career, what success really looks like out of your career. And we had some discoveries as we were doing that. And I have this vivid memory of getting a message from you that it didn't it made sense, but it definitely happened very quickly. So tell us a little bit about what happened for you in that first
Yeah.
month of working together.
Yeah, I think we had been working together for a month, and then you sent me to Denver Startup Week with some homework, and I came out on the other side with something very unexpected. So I woke up one day, and the degree of sort of like dissatisfaction or the difficulty I was having, like dragging myself to my laptop for that day, like officially was overwhelming. I had been kind of job searching. Nothing was really sticking out to me. I had been noodling over the idea of entrepreneurship. And then this morning hit, and I was like, it's time. I'm putting in my 60 days notice today, and I'm going to start my own product strategy and operations consulting business. I don't know how to do that, but I've never known what I'm doing in this life. So I'm sure I'll figure it out. And
Yeah, I think I was
yeah,
the first person you told, and I remember I
I
got
think
the
that's
message
right.
and you were like, "By the way, I quit my job. We should probably talk about that today." And I was
I
like,
think
"All
we
right."
literally had a session in like an hour and a half, and I'm like, whatever you had planned, irrelevant now, because here's the new thing that I think you said something like, oh, then we're going to do something a little different today.
Yeah. Yeah, then today's session, we should probably talk about that.
Yep.
So that's exciting. And as someone who considers herself quite entrepreneurial, me,
You are.
I don't want it to be misconstrued. I hope, right? Like, I guess share with folks, do you feel that that was something I had put in your head? Or like, I guess, where did
Oh,
this
good
seems
question.
sudden, right? So like,
Right.
how would you explain like kind of where this came from and how this
Yeah.
came to be to someone who might think, you know, this was somehow prescribed upon you?
Yeah. I had a few mentors at Sondermind who saw, I suppose, things in me that I had a lot of trouble seeing in myself. So this was even as at my last PM role, I was actually a data science PM. Again, what am I doing? You know, part of why I joined that team was because it was an acquired team. And that was our first acquisition. And it was sort of like, how do we integrate culture and tech and all of this? So I helped them integrate them further and launch our first instance of machine learning into the core product that we had, which was really exciting. So in that role, that was some of the best like mentorship and support that I had from like everyone around me. Like I was around such senior leaders and product people, and I was just getting constant feedback and learning. So in that time, some of those folks were asking me, like, what do you want to do in life? Like, those were probably the first times that folks were asking me about the career. And I had this itch in the back of my head that at some point I would like to do a thing, like capital D, capital A, capital T, like do
Mhm.
something. And I wanted to be the person like responsible for setting a vision. I wanted to be the person responsible for like hiring people and growing a team and supporting those people in their growth. And like, I wanted to build something that, I could truly be responsible for. So I had this in the back of my head for a while. I started my own babysitting business when I was in second grade, like no big deal. But so it was like always there. Do you know what I mean? And when you and I started having these envisioning conversations, I think that was one of the first things I said, or in my letter to self, was that exact thing. And then you made the mistake of telling me that I could just do anything. And
Exact
that
words.
was not your exact
Very
words.
clear.
It's not,
But I did say you're you are the only person who can stop you from doing the
yep,
thing you want to do.
yes. Mhm. And so you're like, if you wanna test these waters or if you wanna go figure something out, go to Denver Startup Week and talk to a presenter after every session that you go to. And I also got the wild idea to just go to, like, the founders happy hour. I just, like, walked my ass in there, like, "What am I? Am I lost? Like, what is happening?" But I just got so inspired by some of the things that I saw there around people's journeys and how they just stepped into entrepreneurship. And so many of the folks I talked to after their sessions were like, "Just do it." They're like, "Do
Yeah.
it."
Yeah. There's
Um,
no
and
I mean, if you have an idea, you have something you wanna do, the only thing stopping you is you. And in the Shine program, I tell folks a lot of the time that when we sit and idolize a potential situation or a potential employer or a potential life change, right? Or imagine if you're like, "Oh, wouldn't it be amazing to move to Alaska?" Like, you can spend a lot of time in your imagination. It
totally. Mhm.
but and that's fun, don't get me wrong, but until you actually go spend time in Alaska, I'm weirdly obsessed with Alaskan reality television shows, fun
Let's
fact about
go.
me. Apparently, they have a lot of mosquitoes in the summer, right? So it would take me
Yes.
5 minutes in the summer months of being in Alaska to go, "Yeah, I don't wanna be here."
All good.
So, yeah, that, like, action is what creates clarity, and I remember being
Yeah.
so proud of you, but also, like, it was so clear to me that you were taking steps that were giving you an opportunity to try it on, right? So,
Yeah.
like, hear other people's stories about starting something to reveal that no one goes into it fully confident. And you've been using the word bravery, which I think is really important. 'Cause I think what people want to feel is confident, but confidence comes after doing something.
Love that.
What has to come first is the bravery to do the thing. The
Totally.
confidence comes from the fact that you did it. And so there was bravery in having those early conversations to kind of see through the lens of someone else's experience what it might look like,
Yeah.
so that you pretty quickly started to realize, oh, no one really knows what they're doing, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us a little bit, at this point you do have a full-time job, so we're gonna talk about that in a minute. Spoiler alert, this entrepreneurial journey was not permanent, but this was a big moment. So tell us a bit about what you launched, and
Mhm.
if you're open to it, tell us a little bit about what your goals were. I know one of them was around, could you replace your salary, for example? And so, yeah,
Yeah.
tell us about some
Gosh.
of those achievements and what it is that you actually launched.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did was launch a hot mess, right? Because I took my gumbo pot of random generalist skills that I had
Yeah.
and was like, surely someone wants this giant pot of things. And so I honestly don't think I knew what exactly, I didn't know that I should hone in on the niche that I'm really good at. What I did know about what I wanted to do is I had so enjoyed that work. Remember the like old coat, like that moment of like, "Oh, I'm like helping things run better. I can see this." I knew that I wanted that feeling. And I found at least the idea really fulfilling that I might help other small and scaling startups kind of integrate that stuff that we had sort of retroactively built back in at Sondermind. I wanted to see, like, can I hit other startups earlier, put this way of thinking and way of working into their DNA so that they can carry it forward through whatever their growth path is or whatever pivots they're going through or whatever. So that's what I knew. I knew that I wanted to help other people in that way. And then that's not at all what I did. I was like all over the map. I did some product analytics work for a global education company. I helped a couple of founders put together a product. I, had a year-long engagement with a learning and development company, and my roles varied as the product team I was supporting needed me to do. It was a huge spread, which I think that ended up being the best, one of the best parts of it was the exposure to different industries, different sizes, different needs. It was just such a cool experience. So whatever I went in there with, later became very irrelevant as I was just doing stuff.
And I tell folks that a lot. If you're starting a services company, and we talked about this, like you have to start to draw a box around what you think you want to offer. But part of the initial goal is just get a client because so much of
Right.
services is going to be shaped by what those clients need. You also have to start getting some income coming in. And of course, the ideal is that you can deliver some projects, get some word of mouth going, because inevitably you
Yes,
get referrals, which I know you benefited from.
totally.
But as time goes on, and the same was true for the coaching business, like as time goes on, you start to figure out where the work feels really natural, almost doesn't feel like work. And
Totally.
it's
Yes.
it's interesting. I feel like I saw you get to that moment where you're like, they're gonna pay me to do this thing that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah, totally.
yeah, it is. I'm curious. So tell us about the skills. So one might think, oh, you started consulting or freelancing, doing like kind of product work, but I know at the time our conversations were around how do you get business? How do you scope this work? And then of course, how do you actually do it? So I'm curious, like looking back, what product skills did you leverage or what new product skills would you say you built during that year or so of entrepreneurship?
Yeah. I think the biggest one, I don't think I realized until I was a consultant how much I relied on like the depth of relationships that I was able to form in in-house contexts and how integral that was to how I got work done at Sondermind is non-existent when you're a consultant. Like you have no credibility beyond they clearly have recognized you as an expert, which is why you're in the room in the first place. But like they don't know who you are. They don't know how you work. I had gotten by for a while on established relationships. And so I think one thing that I learned was it was a little bit twofold. Like one, how could I show up as the expert that was needed without any of that credibility? Like if I brought a thing to the table that I wanted them to implement or change or that I thought was going to help them, like I had that moment, that discussion, that hour they were paying me for or whatever to like simultaneously convince them of my idea, but convince them that like I was credible enough
Mhm.
that they should walk away with the thing I was bringing to the table. And so my storytelling and my ability to concisely speak a position and justify it with facts or data or whatever it was, I really really needed to develop that early on. And I think because I didn't already have a relationship with those folks, the second thing I needed to learn was how I thought I was really good at building consensus and bringing people in, but there's a different level in consulting of like you're an outsider by nature, so how do you make them feel like it's their idea? How do you validate their ideas and bring them in? How do you create this very specific kind of relationship or this specific kind of culture so that there's good vibes in addition to expertise? I found that
Mhm.
so challenging compared to in-house work, but it was such a great learning experience and something that I'm like I really use today as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was
And
one of a million things.
yeah. But at a certain point, you decided that this wasn't for you anymore. And you again wanted to embark on a job search, which led you now to your current role. So tell us a little bit about that decision to leave entrepreneurship behind and do something else, and tell us a bit about where you're at now.
Yeah. So, back to getting to try on a lot of different companies and problems and hats and all of that. It became like really clear to me throughout this work that I don't just like product strategy and I don't just like operations. I like those things in conjunction with each other. I think also, and there's some vulnerability in me talking about this, but I'm not the only one who's ever been through it. I struggled to find product market fit. I was someone who wanted to work with small startups to help them, transition their mindset from whether it's founder mode or whatever it is to really start thinking about how do we get product done here now and how will we continue to get done. And I continuously found this imbalance of like the people who saw how I could help them often didn't have the money, or the people who did have the money wanted someone with a different kind of experience or a different thing. And it was just becoming, unless I had four clients or unless I had one client who had the serendipity of they did have the money and I was doing the thing. Like without those things, and these could fluctuate so much, right? Like the volatility of entrepreneurship, particularly in early days, it was very, very tough. The emotional roller coaster is real, the self-doubt is real. All of those things just had me thinking like, I am really craving stability in something that I really enjoy doing. And you know me, I'm a mega extrovert. And so the other thing around entrepreneurship is like I was lonely as hell. And you can have a coach, you can have mentors, you can have friends, you can have old coworkers, but there's something so inherently lonely about doing your own thing, particularly if you're a solopreneur that like did not fit with who I am as a person. And so I knew that I wanted to work with a good team. I knew that I wanted to go back to mission driven work. I knew that I wanted stability, and I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I knew that whatever it was the opposite of entrepreneurship. And I knew I needed to make some degree of salary so that I didn't lose my home and my daughter could eat dinner, which,
Important things,
yeah,
very important things.
it is worth celebrating that like my daughter did not go hungry while I was doing this year and a half of work. Like that's probably the thing I'm proudest of. Is like food was on the table. The home was
Oh,
not lost. um
that's
yeah, so
amazing. Side note is you talk about it like there was no money, but I believe you replaced your salary. Am I right?
yeah, I did. By the end of the year, not quite, but the trajectory I was on in the first few months was outpacing my monthly salary from my job before that, which was really exciting. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but the volatility is real. So for anybody who's listening who has done entrepreneurial work, that is a very real thing, and it's a real shift. I remember in our conversations of the level of ownership, the level of commitment, the level of thinking that is involved in just shifting from being a salary employee to doing your own thing and having to cover from selling and marketing what you're doing all the way out to the doing of the thing. I'd be curious, like, was that wasted time in your mind? Or as you look back
No.
now, how do you view that time, that season, as you might call it?
That season, I have 0 regrets, which is not to say it wasn't hard, which is not to say I didn't, like, regret it in the moment, which is not to say that I didn't do, things, like, very wrong in certain ways, but I don't regret it at all because it was the most significant amount of personal and professional growth I have done. You were talking earlier about the number of reps and how, like, it's not the length of time, it's the number of reps. This year and a half was like a pressure cooker on me of developing personal and professional skills. My imposter syndrome, she's gone somehow because you can't because you can't be an imposter. There's a level of delusion I have found that you need to have as a founder slash entrepreneur. And
Have
like,
a bit of delusion.
yeah, one must. Hi, I'm Amanda and I have delusions. But it was really, and to your point of like, you're responsible for everything. If I sat there in self doubt, and I did sometimes, that was like a few hours or a few days that I was not working, and it was a self fulfilling prophecy. If I believed I wasn't good enough, if I believed I didn't have something to bring to the table, if I believed all of that, that's what happened. That's what would happen is I wouldn't get a client or I wouldn't whatever. And so there was this
Yeah,
element of ain't nobody got time for imposter syndrome. You can't have it. That's one of so many examples of where I feel like it was very much like a metamorphosis into whatever it is I am today, a moth, apparently.
yeah, yeah. So tell us about the role you're in now
Mhm.
and how you see it fitting into that broader career vision for you personally. Because it's
Yeah.
different. You're now a product data analyst. This isn't
Mhm.
necessarily what you set out to be, but tell us like what was appealing about this role and what are you yeah, what are you up to?
Yeah, it's funny, back to the career vision thing, I have it now. Like, I know elements, at least, of what I wanna be doing for the next 5 years or so. I know that I would like to be in a leadership position around product operations, and I don't care what that title is, I just know that that's the work I love doing. And so, when I returned to the job search, I tried to come at it with less of a, "What role do I want next?" I'm starting to ask myself again, what gaps do I have on the way to that dream? Or like, let's ignore the position for a second. What gaps do I have in my current professional life that could be solved in some way through the next thing that I do. And so I job searched everything from like senior, whatever consultant to like straight up PM again to program manager. But what does that really mean when you get into the job description? And kind of went back to that world of possibilities. And then so we had talked before about my lack of network and the tunnel vision you get when you're in a job. Other cool thing of the last year and a half was I had this wonderful, wonderful journey of like community building, reaching out to old coworkers who I haven't talked to in 2 years and meeting new people at networking events. So, speaking of networking, I had met this one person and he and I were both at one of your AMAs. And we
Yep.
just like immediately vibed. Like we were clearly on the same page about what we thought exciting about product. And we were taking a lot of the same things away from what you were saying. And it was like lighting us both up. So we just stayed in contact for a while. Like every month or two, we would meet up and, he'd talk about his work at Connect for Health Colorado, which is where I eventually landed. I'd talk about my entrepreneurial journey. We'd talk about our kids because we both had young kids. And so it was like we were just had one of our scheduled monthly check-ins. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking of transitioning out and I'm looking for product operations work. And here's what that actually means to me. And Eric was like, well, we have a job posted that isn't that, but maybe you would be interested in looking at it. And I look at it and it's like title's wrong, salary's wrong, some of the technical skills wrong, but there was so much right about it. Oh, I just gave myself chills.
Right?
It was a
Yeah.
really special moment because I'd been on LinkedIn going through all the things and like never, ever, ever did I put in product data analyst. Like it's so if you look at my resume now and you don't know what I'm doing, it seems
Mhm.
weird. It's just a weird
Yeah.
divide. But there was stuff in there around enabling data-driven decision making and finding best practices in how data can fit into the product lifecycle
Mhm.
and using data to deliver strategic insights and coaching the team on these things. And there was something in there that I think it was like consulting background preferred, PM background preferred. The vibe of the job description was right. I had, I thought Eric, I just thought the world of him. And I'm like, we're just gonna apply. It doesn't matter. We're just gonna apply. And I cannot say enough about how wonderful the team was and how even just from these interviews, I felt like they were invested in my career path, like genuinely invested. Not like where do you want to be in 5 years, but like where
Yeah.
do you want to be in 5 years and how will this role help you get there and how can we like it
Yeah.
was such an incredible, genuine, transparent, amazing experience. I had another opportunity at the same time, and it was for a straight up PM role, another first PM in the business kind of role. And I'm like, oh, I get to do it again. I'll do it over. But there was just something about this. I think you saw me turning on it where I'm like, I don't know what this title is. I don't know what's going on. This will not leave my mind when I did the math from there to my career journey, it's like one gap that I have is as even as a product ops person, where data is actually really important. It's a really important function for a product operations manager. I was like, I have gaps there. And so not only is this business telling me we support your career journey and we can see a future where you're doing the thing you're describing, but also this job will enable me to get there. We will.
I wanna applaud your honesty and your vulnerability in the journey with me to really be open about what was energizing for you, what was draining for you, what was important to you, what wasn't important to you. And I'm just, I continue to be so excited and so proud of you for giving yourself the opportunity to say, you know what, let me look past the title and the salary and really see what this role is about. And to get the opportunity to have the conversations with the team who I know as well. I've got some friends on that team,
That's right.
great team. And to hear about, this is the title now, this is the job now, but this is a growing team where I also believe that you will grow here in the ways that you're looking for. And so that vision that you worked so hard to establish and you iterated on in all those sessions with me, it's like that now, in a way, looking back, it's like the other job didn't make sense. It
I
paid
know.
more, Sure.
Right.
And it was, maybe the quote unquote correct title, but for you and the things that are really important to you in your career in terms of what you wanted to learn, but also what you were looking for flexibility or culture. Like, I don't think you would have gotten those things at that role if we
Yeah,
really put these two roles side by side. And so I just, I, for what it's worth, I see why you made the choice, and I'm so glad to see that you've only been there a few months, but it's clearly been the right choice for what you were hoping to
absolutely.
achieve.
Yep. From a whole person perspective, from a professional perspective, they are mindful of giving me the opportunity to do things that really light me up, which is not always Excel spreadsheets, but that is part of my job and I'm getting better at it and all the things. But there is a comfortable fuzziness to my role, but they always check in with me. They're like, we know this is not what you've been hired for. It's not in the JD. We don't want to be taking advantage of you. And if you're interested in doing this one thing, we could probably talk about it from a
Yeah.
data perspective. But so I just feel
Yes.
I feel seen and treated like a person, and again, I just feel very like it was yeah, I couldn't be happier. I'm in it, and I'm really happy.
Yay. Last question for you. I ask this of everyone who joins.
Yeah.
What's next, or what do you think might be next?
I want to keep moving in the product ops direction, and so I am not, like, trying to talk with the folks at C4 about what like a timeline might look like for whatever that next step is. No one knows. We're the state-based insurance exchange. A lot's happening right now. There's a lot of moving pieces.
Yes.
But just continuing to have those conversations, which they often open up with me, and just kind of figuring out what that path is. And in the meantime, shoring up my data skills. I want to be really solid in methods of analysis, the tool set around it. I'm going to be learning Python in the next little bit. I don't know if I need that on the day to day, but why the hell not? So
Yeah.
there's
Do
things
it.
like that I just stick it in my toolkit. Look for more opportunities to assist with product operations stuff, just to keep those skills warm as well. Continuing to network where I can and keep learning from people.
Absolutely. Keep your
So it's a
head out
lot
of
of like,
the sand.
yes, yes, right. So it's a lot of like, I know what I want to be doing in 1 to 2 years, and I know that in the meantime, I want to keep those skills warm and just continue learning and growing up to that spot so that I'm ready, right? When it's time to step in, I want to be really ready for it.